Terrebonne Parish Sheriff's Office says the teen was shot twice, raped, and burned. The girl's mother and her boyfriend are suspects in the case.
Timothy Johnson and his wife Latricia say their relative escaped from a house of horrors. Now she's in a hospital recovering from horrific injuries. Half of her face is burned off.
Burned, shot, and left for dead. In a case that should have ended with a funeral, Tamyra, a 15-year-old girl, clung desperately to life. They say the bond between mother and daughter is sacred, a connection and love like no other. But in this horrifying case, this bond turned out to be the worst thing that could have ever happened to this 15-year-old girl. This is the story of the Washington and Harris House of Horrors, and Tamyra's determination to live.
15-year-old Terrebonne Parish girl is recovering in a Texas hospital as her mother sits in jail. It's a crime law enforcement agents say will turn your stomach and shock you.
And police found the teen inside the vehicle suffering with injuries. WDSU learned there were...
In April 2024, life in Terrebonne Parish, Louisiana, was calm and peaceful, like any other small southern town. The warm spring air was filled with the sweet smell of blooming flowers, and everything seemed to move at a slow, easy pace. But hidden behind the walls of an ordinary home, a terrible event was taking place, one that would shock the entire nation.
Switching gears now, a 15-year-old Terrebonne Parish girl is recovering at a Texas hospital as her mother sits in jail. We warn you, the details in this case are disturbing. The Terrebonne Parish Sheriff's Office says the teen was shot twice, raped, and burned. The girl's mother and her boyfriend are suspects in the case.
At the center of this harrowing tale was Tamyra, a child whose life had been marked by unimaginable suffering. Tamyra was known for her independence. Even at just 8 years old, she could make her breakfast and get ready for school all on her own. According to her father, Timothy Johnson, and her stepmother, Latricia Johnson, she was so determined to do things herself that she even insisted on braiding her own hair, a task that could take up to 6 hours. In high school at H.L. Bourgeois, Tamyra's drive and energy shone through as she joined the basketball, volleyball, cheerleading, and dance teams. Tamyra had reportedly lived with Johnson and Latricia from 2017 to 2022. Still, eventually, Tamyra expressed a deep desire to reconnect with her biological mother. Johnson was unsure about the idea, but Latricia encouraged it. "A mother and daughter's bond is sacred," she explained, never imagining the heartbreaking events that would follow. "She just wanted her mom to love her," Latricia said. "When we decided to let her go back, I never thought it would turn out to be the worst decision we ever made. The last place you think a child would be unsafe is with their mother, but it turned out to be the most dangerous place she could have gone." Before moving in with Latricia and Johnson in 2017, Tamyra had been living with Harris. However, one incident changed everything. A stranger found Tamyra standing on the side of the road, holding a sign saying she had missed the school bus. The stranger took her to school, and the school immediately contacted Johnson. That's when Tamyra came to live in Napoleonville with her father and stepmother. But things took a troubling turn last year. Phone calls and visits from Tamyra began to dwindle, raising concerns for the family. In March, they discovered Harris had pulled Tamyra out of school the previous September, claiming to homeschool her. By then, she had already missed more than 20 days of school. When Johnson asked Tamyra why she hadn't told anyone about what was happening, she revealed that Harris and her partner had threatened her family's safety. Betrayed by the very person who was meant to shield her from harm, Tamyra suffered months of torment at the hands of her mother, LaTonya Harris, and her mother's boyfriend, Terrence Washington. What happened in that house wasn't just a crime, it was a descent into the darkest recesses of human cruelty. On the night of April 20th, 2024, Baytown police in Texas responded to reports of a reckless driver on Interstate 10 East. The vehicle, driven by Washington, crashed on a service road. Upon arrival, officers found Washington in the driver's seat, holding a firearm. He was taken into custody without incident. However, what they discovered next would send shockwaves through the community. Inside the vehicle lay Tamyra, suffering from severe injuries. Medical personnel described her condition as one of the worst they had ever encountered. She bore extensive burns covering approximately 30% of her body and multiple gunshot wounds to her chest and face. The police quickly transported her to a nearby hospital for urgent medical treatment. The abuse didn't begin with a singular act of violence. It was insidious, starting as harsh discipline and quickly spiraling into a cycle of relentless brutality. Neighbors occasionally heard raised voices and muffled cries from the house. Still, the walls kept the secrets of what was truly happening inside. For the teenage girl, life had become a waking nightmare. Washington, emboldened by Harris's indifference, or worse, her complicity, exerted control through pain and fear. The physical abuse grew more horrifying with each passing day as Harris and Washington pushed the boundaries of cruelty. By the time the nightmare reached its peak in April 2024, the acts of violence had crossed every conceivable line. At first, it was thought that the mother's boyfriend, Terrence Washington, set the girl on fire, flames searing her skin and leaving her with burns over much of her body. And as if that weren't enough, he took up a firearm and shot her multiple times. The girl's screams echoed through the house, but no one came to her aid, and Harris stood by, not as a mother, but as a silent witness to her boyfriend's depravity. But her mother's involvement in this tragic saga was found to be more than disturbing. According to investigators, she allegedly set her daughter on fire after learning about Washington's abuse. Witness accounts from another minor child present during these horrific events confirmed that Harris stood over the victim while she was ablaze, holding a bottle of rubbing alcohol and a lighter. The child recounted waking up during Mardi Gras season to find the victim engulfed in flames. This testimony corroborated claims that the victim had been shot by Washington on 2 separate occasions within their home and left untreated, while the family traveled from Louisiana to Texas. The truth came to light only after a car crash on April 21st involving Harris, Washington, the injured girl, and a younger child. When officers arrived, they found the teenager in the back seat of the car. Her injuries told a story of prolonged and unimaginable abuse, burns covering much of her body and multiple gunshot wounds. It was immediately apparent that her condition was not the result of the crash, but of something far more sinister. As investigators delved deeper into the case, they uncovered the horrifying details of what had taken place inside the family's trailer. Washington admitted to sexually abusing the teenager over an extended period. He also confessed to shooting her, but admitted that it was Harris, not him, who had set Tamyra on fire. And Harris, who was thought to be protecting her child, was an active participant in the abuse. The most chilling aspect of this case wasn't just the violence itself, but the reasoning behind it. The teenage girl had disclosed that she was a victim of sexual abuse. This revelation should have prompted compassion and protection. Instead, Harris and Washington turned on her, blaming her for the abuse she had suffered. Their warped sense of justification fueled the escalating violence, compounding the emotional and psychological trauma inflicted on the child. When law enforcement finally arrived at the home, what they discovered was nothing short of horrific. The smell of decomposing flesh lingered in the air, a macabre testament to the girl's untreated injuries. She was found alive, barely. Her body bore the evidence of prolonged suffering, burns, bullet wounds, and countless other scars, each a silent witness to the horrors she had endured. Harris and Washington were swiftly taken into custody. As news of their arrest spread, the community struggled to reconcile the image of Harris, a seemingly ordinary mother, with the monstrous acts she had either committed or allowed. Washington, meanwhile, showed no remorse, but he cooperated with the police and confessed to all his crimes and the mother's.
Well, the mother is charged with attempted first-degree murder, second-degree cruelty to a juvenile, and domestic abuse, battery, child endangerment. The mother's boyfriend also faces a list of charges. The two are set to appear in court next month.
The charges brought against LaTonya Harris and Terrence Washington painted a grim and harrowing picture of betrayal, cruelty, and unimaginable violence that left a community reeling. The pair stood accused of inflicting suffering on a 15-year-old girl, Harris's daughter, in a case that shocked even seasoned investigators. For LaTonya Harris, the charges represented not only legal accusations, but also a profound betrayal of her role as a mother. Among the charges was attempted first-degree murder, a claim that Harris had actively participated in premeditated actions designed to end her daughter's life. In Louisiana, this charge carries the potential for life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Harris was also charged with second-degree cruelty to a juvenile, which applies to the intentional or criminally negligent mistreatment of a child, resulting in serious bodily harm or permanent neurological damage. If convicted, this charge alone could result in up to 40 years in prison. Furthermore, Harris faced domestic abuse, battery, and child endangerment, a charge reserved for acts of violence committed against a family member in the presence of a child. Convictions on such charges often result in substantial fines and prison time, depending on the severity of the abuse.
Terrebonne Parish and the horrific case of a beaten teenage girl who was shot and set on fire, according to police. Her mother, who's accused in this case, has pleaded not guilty. This is that 15-year-old is still recovering both physically and emotionally.
Shockingly, Harris pleaded not guilty to all charges. Her defense strategy took many by surprise, as she denied any role in the violence inflicted on her daughter. For a community grappling with the horrors of the case, her plea was difficult to reconcile with the overwhelming evidence and accounts presented by prosecutors. Harris's denial added a layer of outrage and confusion to an already heart-wrenching case, leaving many to wonder how she could turn away from the suffering of her child. She remains in the Terrebonne Parish Criminal Justice Complex, where she is being held on a $1 million bond. For Terrence Washington, the charges painted him as the central perpetrator of the unspeakable acts of violence. He was charged with 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder, each carrying the possibility of life imprisonment without parole if convicted. Like Harris, Washington also faced second-degree cruelty to a juvenile. This charge added up to 40 years of potential imprisonment to his list of penalties. Additionally, Washington was charged with obstruction of justice and accused of tampering with evidence or interfering with the investigation. This crime carries a maximum of 40 years in prison when linked to serious offenses. However, the most heinous accusations against Washington were tied to his systematic sexual abuse of the victim. He was charged with molestation of a juvenile, which involves lewd or lascivious acts upon or in the presence of a child under 17. If convicted, this charge could result in a sentence of up to 99 years in prison. Further, he faced 3 counts of indecent behavior with a juvenile, punishable by up to 7 years per count, and 5 counts of second-degree rape, which alleged repeated instances of non-consensual sexual intercourse under coercive or incapacitating circumstances. Each of these charges carries a sentence of 5 to 40 years. He was subsequently denied bond. These charges served as more than just legal terms. They exposed the horrifying extent of the abuse and the betrayal suffered by the young girl. As prosecutors built their case, they presented overwhelming evidence of prolonged cruelty, manipulation, and violence. Harris's not guilty plea only deepened the tragedy, as it symbolized her continued denial of her role in the suffering.
Timothy Johnson and his wife Latricia say their relative escaped from a house of horrors. Now she's in a hospital recovering from horrific injuries. Half of her face is burned off.
Tamyra's survival is a testament to her resilience, but her path to recovery is both extensive and challenging. Immediately after her rescue, she was transported to a hospital in the Galveston area, where medical professionals worked tirelessly to address her critical injuries. She had sustained 3rd and 4th degree burns covering 30% of her body, necessitating multiple surgeries, including skin grafts, to repair the damaged tissue. Additionally, she suffered gunshot wounds that resulted in the loss of an eye and significant damage to her facial structure, requiring reconstructive procedures. If it weren't for the car crash on April 20th, police believe Tamyra might not have been found alive. Beyond the physical injuries, the psychological impact of enduring such severe abuse at the hands of her mother and her mother's boyfriend is profound. Mental health professionals emphasize that survivors of familial abuse often face complex trauma, which can lead to long-term emotional and psychological challenges. Therapeutic interventions, including trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, are essential to help her process the betrayal and violence she experienced. The support of a stable and nurturing environment is crucial for her emotional healing.
As a fighter,
seeing my child for the first time like that was like seeing, it's like seeing someone dead.
the father of a 15-year-old deciding not to show his face, but letting his words describe his pain.
I'm angry. I feel like I let my child on. Like I wasn't there to protect her.
It was to see what she looked like and what she'd been through. And considering all she's been through, I don't even see how she's not mad at the world.
Since the crash, her father, Johnson, has regained legal custody of Tamyra. Despite everything she's been through, he says she remains in good spirits and hasn't lost her sense of humor. Tamyra has even shared her dream of becoming a lawyer one day, determined to protect others from experiencing the horrors she endured. Now she's eager to return home and seems to have her appetite back in full force. Johnson says she's already made a list of requests, including gumbo, ice cream, lasagna, rotel dip, and even a crawfish boil. Her resilience shines through, and she's ready to move forward with a smile. The community has rallied to support her recovery. Her stepmother, Latricia, initiated a GoFundMe campaign to cover the escalating medical expenses, highlighting the family's commitment to providing the necessary care. On the website, which has received a total donation of $41,693 of the $45,000 goal, Johnson detailed the extent of the injuries, including the loss of teeth due to the trajectory of a bullet. He expressed hope that the victim could return to their Louisiana home once her condition stabilizes. However, medical professionals have indicated that she will require ongoing treatment for at least another year, underscoring the long-term nature of her recovery process. The Department of Family and Children's Services, DCFS, has acknowledged prior instances of abuse in 2013 and 2014, during which Tamyra was temporarily placed in foster care. It's also on record that Harris pleaded guilty to child desertion in 2017. Despite interventions, the cycle of abuse persisted, culminating in the recent horrific events. This history underscores the importance of comprehensive protective measures and continuous monitoring to prevent re-victimization. As she embarks on this arduous journey, the combined efforts of medical professionals, mental health specialists, family, and the broader community aim to provide a foundation for healing. While the physical wounds may gradually mend, the psychological scars require compassionate and sustained support to foster resilience and hope for her future.
She's an incredible young lady to be able to encounter what she went through and be able to tell our detectives what happened.
The revelations surrounding this case sent ripples through both Louisiana and Texas communities. Local law enforcement officials expressed their horror at the extent of abuse inflicted upon the young girl by her family members. During a news conference, Terrebonne Parish Sheriff Tim Soignier described Harris and Washington as pure evil as he held back his emotion. "We are making sure she has emotional support. Our detectives are there. If she needs us, we are there. We are going to be there every step of the way," said Soignier. For investigators and the community, these charges represented a long overdue effort to seek justice for the teenager, who had not only survived severe physical injuries, burns covering 30% of her body and multiple gunshot wounds, but also endured psychological torment that defies comprehension. The arrests of Harris and Washington sent a strong message that such crimes would not go unanswered. Still, they also left lingering questions about how such abuse could persist unchecked for so long. The case highlighted not only individual acts of violence, but also systemic failures that allowed such abuse to occur over an extended period without intervention. Reports indicated that there had been previous allegations against Harris for child abuse dating back over a decade, raising questions about how such situations could persist unchecked. When the details of the case became public, the town of Terrebonne Parish was plunged into collective grief and outrage. Neighbors who had once dismissed the cries from the house as family disputes now grappled with guilt and disbelief. Advocacy groups seized on the case as a rallying cry, calling for stronger measures to protect vulnerable children and better systems to identify and intervene in cases of abuse. As of May 2024, Harris and Washington were awaiting trial. Legal experts predicted a harsh sentence, with both likely to face decades, if not life, behind bars. For many, however, no punishment could adequately reflect the magnitude of their crimes. The courtroom will serve as a platform for justice, but for the victim, justice will be measured in her ability to reclaim her life. Despite the harrowing circumstances, the 15-year-old girl emerged as a beacon of resilience. Her survival was a testament to her strength and will to live, even in the face of unimaginable suffering. Social workers, therapists, and advocates rallied around her, determined to provide the support she needed to navigate the long road to recovery. Tamyra's story sparked a wave of awareness about the hidden horrors of child abuse. Communities across Louisiana and beyond began to reflect on how they could do more to protect vulnerable children and recognize the signs of abuse. Her voice, silenced for so long, now became a call to action. The case of LaTonya Harris and Terrence Washington serves as a grim reminder of the dangers of looking the other way. The neighbors who ignored the signs, the systems that failed to intervene, and the society that allowed this to happen were all complicit in some way. But out of this tragedy came a renewed commitment to vigilance and accountability. The 15-year-old victim's story became a rallying cry for change. Advocacy groups pushed for stronger child welfare policies, mandatory reporting laws, and better resources for victims of abuse. The community vowed never to let another child suffer in silence. While the scars of this tragedy will never fully fade, the resilience of the victim and the outrage of the community have laid the groundwork for a better future. Her story, as painful as it is, stands as a testament to the human spirit's ability to endure and overcome even the darkest of circumstances. As the courtroom battles unfold and justice takes its course, the world watches, reminded of the fragility of life and the importance of standing up for those who cannot stand up for themselves. Tamyra, once a victim, now symbolizes hope, a hope that no other child will have to endure what she did, and that the world can become a safer place for the vulnerable and voiceless. This case is not just about punishment. It is about ensuring that no child has to endure what this young girl has faced. It is about creating systems that protect, rather than fail, those most vulnerable among us, our children. As we await further developments in this ongoing investigation and legal proceedings, we must remain committed to standing against abuse in all its forms and advocating for justice on behalf of those who cannot speak for themselves. Thank you for watching. Let's keep raising awareness about these critical issues, because together we can make a difference.
Don't forget to like the video and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming true crime stories.